The world has gone through a seismic change in the first 5 months of 2022. A big conflict has broken out between Russia and Ukraine, which has split the world into two halves. While the countries are taking sides from the word get go, India has stood apart in its own orbit. However, much like the laws of universe where space-time wraps around a massive celestial body, India has become the pivot of the new world order that every country wants to position itself into. Hi and welcome to TFI English, the national socio-political analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host Piyush, and if you haven't subscribed to TFI English channel yet, hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon to receive all the latest updates. Coming back to the story, in this video I will explain why India is the new center of this polarized world. Reportedly, the US is preparing a military aid package for India to deepen security ties and reduce country's dependence on Russian weapons. The package under consideration is expected to be around $500 million, which will make India one of the largest recipients of such aid behind Israel and Egypt. Over the past decade, India has bought more than $4 billion worth of military equipment from the US and more than $25 billion worth of equipment from Russia, according to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. The message and intent of the US are clear. It wants to serenade India into its corner with its charm and money might. After trying to force the issue using robotic and ill-mannered diplomats who were promptly shut down by New Delhi, the Joe Biden administration has thought of presenting itself as a reliable partner to India by taking a pragmatic approach. As reported extensively by TFI in the backdrop of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, where the US is attempting to alienate the Kremlin, Biden sent his Lieutenant Deputy NSA for International Economics, Dalip Singh, to New Delhi to set the stage right. However, instead of using his diplomatic acumen to persuade India to not buy oil from Russia and set up an alternative payment mechanism, Dalip threatened New Delhi with consequences. Any other government in New Delhi may have taken the blows lying down, but External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar quietly set Washington in its place by stating, "It is interesting because we have seen for some time what looks almost like a campaign against us on this issue. While the oil prices go up, I think it is natural for countries to go out into the market and look for what are good deals for their people."
You know, it's interesting because we've seen for some time what looks almost like a campaign on this issue. When oil prices go up, I think it's natural for countries to go out into the market and look for what are good deals for their people.
S. Jaishankar laid the facts bare and said Europe bought 15% more oil and gas from Russia than it did a month before. Most of the major buyers of oil and gas from Russia are in Europe. We get the bulk of our energy supplies from the Middle East, about 7.5 to 8% from the US, maybe less than 1% from Russia.
Europe has bought, I think, 15% more oil and gas from Russia than it did the month before. If you look at the major buyers of oil and gas from Russia, I think you'd find most of them are in Europe. We ourselves get the bulk of our energy supplies from the Middle East, about 7.5%, 8% of our oil from the US. In the past, maybe less than 1% from Russia.
Such has been India's clout in the backdrop of the Russia-Ukraine crisis that European leaders are constantly visiting India and trying to pick on the Modi government's brains. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited India in April, followed by Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission, who turned up in New Delhi for a two-day visit. Foreign ministers of Poland, Lithuania, Slovenia, Portugal, the Netherlands, Norway and Luxembourg are also expected to be in India. The foreign ministers of Argentina, Armenia, Guyana, Nigeria, Madagascar and the Philippines were already present at the Raisina dialogue, where Ukraine dominated the majority of the conversation. Even in the case of wheat exports, which were temporarily banned by India last Saturday, the Western world was forced to keep quiet and allow New Delhi to deal with the situation. In the wake of poor weather conditions and China-induced wheat inflation due to hoarding of Indian wheat, It became imperative for the government to impose a ban on wheat export. It was necessary to beat these two devils. Moreover, the government was transparent in its approach as it did not take any indirect measures like imposing a minimum export price or putting any other trade barriers. The West cried hoarse initially, but once New Delhi put forth its statement, the former retreated swiftly. While the world focuses its attention on Ukraine and to some extent Sri Lanka, Afghanistan has been left to fend for itself from the despicable Talibanis. New Delhi has outrightly refused to accept the authority of the Taliban in running the government in Kandahar. Now, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Regional Anti-Terror Structure meeting chaired by India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has turned attention towards Afghanistan. And so far, the panel, which includes a certain China, has not objected to New Delhi's position, suggesting a change in heart. The change in heart from China can be a counter maneuver to India's offensive tactics in the Indian Ocean as well as the Indo-Pacific region, which has put Beijing on a red alert. Reportedly, to counter China's string of pearls strategy, India has come up with the necklace of diamonds strategy. After realizing the Chinese nefarious activities, India started to fortify its presence in the Indian Ocean region and made strong security ties with region's countries. India believes it is the net security provider in the region, and any infiltration around the area will sabotage the Indian security. In its strategy, India first made its presence at the choke point of the Strait of Malacca. With India-Singapore bilateral agreement, India secured the Indian Navy presence at the Changi Naval Base in Singapore. Furthermore, India is also making strategic alliance with China's neighbors like Mongolia and Japan, as the countries are also having border disputes with the paper dragon. China understands that going toe-to-toe with New Delhi on global map can be an energy-sapping proposition. Thus, by attempting to take a positive position in lieu of the tough topics, it is trying to form a triumvirate of India, Russia, China in the region to counter the West's ambition of making India the leader of its offensive operations in the Indo-Pacific, whether it be through the Quad or global NATO. The world may have two conventional poles, but in the New World Order, it is India that is acting as a third magnetic pole, attracting geopolitical attention from countries across the globe.